scale, really nice, and all the ingredients. Today we're going to be using peppers, mushrooms, canned corn, canned red beans, canned chicken, and rice. As I cut up these peppers, I'm going to go through one of the reasons why peppers are actually fruit. The fruit group includes all fruits and 100% fruit juice. You can freeze, can, or dehydrate them, but fruits have the seeds inside, so we're actually getting our fruits and vegetables in this plate. Typically, a man would want about 2 to 2.5 cups of fruit, and a woman would want about 1.5 to 2 cups of fruit a day. The size of those servings change with your age. Now, as we move through the reasons why this is a whole food dish, I just put up the mushrooms. Mushrooms count as the other in the vegetable group, although they are a fungi. Any vegetable or 100% vegetable juice counts as part of the vegetable group. Vegetables can be raw or cooked and can be fresh, frozen, canned, or dried. I'm moving into the oils and fats. There's about a tablespoon of olive oil in here. It is a healthy fat, but the amount of the fat in the dish specifically is very low because mostly I use that to saute the mushrooms and pull a little bit of the flavor of the salt, pepper, onion powder, and garlic into the mushroom. I like to use the mushrooms to start because they pull the flavor in, and then as you continue cooking, they release the flavor pretty evenly into the rest of the dish. As I'm heating up the cast iron skillet, we're going to come into the point where that steam is me actually flicking water onto the skillet. It helps me determine if the skillet's hot enough to put the mushrooms on. I heat it up slowly and evenly, so this is sped up a little bit. But just take a little bit of the water and flick it off your fingers to tell if it's hot enough. Then I added garlic powder and onion powder. You can be pretty liberal with this because the mushrooms absorb the garlic powder and onion powder pretty well. That's about a small pinch of pepper and salt. Again, you can be more liberal or less liberal depending upon what you want in your flavorings. The mushrooms are very good at pulling in that flavor, so don't feel like you were too liberal because it'll spread out into this quite large dish by the end of it. Now we're going to move into how we're including the other food groups in here. The next food group is our grains. We're going to be hitting the whole grains. This is going to be the rice going into that non-stick ceramic pan over to the left. Grains group are made from wheat, rice, oats, cornmeal, barley, or another cereal. Bread, pasta, and breakfast cereals can count. There are two subgroups, which is whole grain and refined grain. We are using the whole grain rice form here. Typically about a cup of the whole grain. 3 cups of water. I do this a little bit less measured water-wise, 2 grain-wise. More water is not going to hurt, you just need to break it down a little bit. For the fresh grains, about 8 ounces of mushroom and 300 grams of pepper of all various colors. As you can see, I put the peppers over the top of the mushrooms. That allows the heat to cook through the mushrooms and the steam to rise up through the peppers and really pull the flavor from the mushroom up into the peppers. You'll see I use this as a tactic cooking quite often. We'll let that finish a little bit. It's important to note this is sped up by about 12 times, so this whole cooking process takes about an hour to an hour and a half, and at various timers you can do other chores or work. I was working on the computer at this time, and I was periodically going over just to check and make sure that food wasn't burning. The water from the peppers helps boil the flavor into the dish pretty well. At this point, you're starting to see the peppers cook. Once the water starts going out of each portion of the dish is when I add the next portion. So very soon you're going to see me add in the canned chicken. Now, I don't remove the water or the fat from the canned chicken. It's already a low-fat type of chicken, and cooking that chicken fat and the juices of the chicken into the vegetables can add a decent amount of flavor. Similar to any of the other canned products that I would add in here, you can see as the liquid ends up boiling, and again, pulling that flavor from the peppers into the chicken and into the juices that are going to be mixed into the rice later on. So that's going to act as part of our protein groups. This is what I call a complete food. It contains all of the protein groups that you would need. Now we're pouring those juices and all of the vegetables and fruit into the rice. Currently we have, I think, 4 out of the 5 groups represented here. We have the grains with the rice, we have the vegetables with the mushrooms, we have the fruits with the peppers, and the proteins with the chicken. Later on, as we finish off the dish and split it up into separate groups, we will use the replacement of sour cream in order to get some healthy gut bacteria. You can use a low-fat Greek yogurt, unflavored, and include your dairy. Very soon you're going to see in this dish that there is not only one of each food group, but we also have corn coming in right now, which is canned corn. I'm going to drop that in with all of the juices from the canned corn, as well as beans, which is another protein food as well. The more variety you can get in your diet, the better off you are. And you get more flavor. I'll typically also have these with another whole grain, so if you can get some whole grain tortilla chips or some whole grain wraps, you can make burritos or nachos. Depending upon your calorie count for the day that you're able to have. I'm just going to let that stew to cook the juices out. Typically I'll determine that this is done after I've added the beans and the rest of the water itself, the rest of the juices have cooked into the dish itself. We're not going to want to waste any of the juices or any of the flavorings that we've put in there. We want it to cook back into the food with just the steam and the water cooking off itself. Okay, and we've waited a little bit for the steam to bubble off, and this is when we're going to include that corn I talked about previously. The corn I have here has a little bit less of the juices in it than the other canned products, so this one will cook off pretty quickly. And I'm typically adding these in the order in which the food is best cooked in. So at the beginning, the mushrooms hold the flavor very well, and the peppers need to be cooked in order for them to remove the water. The rice takes a long time to cook, so we need to add that into its water at around the same time of the peppers, or if not, just a little bit afterwards. But when you start getting down towards when you're adding the beans in, if you add the beans a little bit too early and you start boiling them in the water, they end up getting mushy and they don't flavor too well. So you don't need a ton of flavor for the beans. You just need to have them added in at a point where you can cook off the juice and have the beans cooked into the mixture, and then you can really just quickly remove those. Then we're going to let it sit again for a couple minutes and the dish should be done. I typically use the serving sizes that we have here, about 15, 16 ounce cans of red beans. We'll use like a Swanson 12.5 ounce can of chicken, regular size corn can, maybe 8 or 10 ounces, about 300